Actually, all of you out here today, essentially one way or another, you're the next generation that's going to be either directly or indirectly taking care of these forests and our natural resources out here. Thinking that, you know what, it would be nice to get you guys out on the ground and actually seeing what goes on out here, the management activities that go on, and what happens under these different types of management activities. Off of 4 different scenarios, you guys are kind of each go through and kind of develop a management strategy and a harvest strategy and decide which trees are going to stay and which trees are going to go. I want this to be a two-way kind of an education thing out here today. So you guys are all going to be managers one way or the other today on what we do, and hopefully take some things home that you can share with your other classmates.
Entirely bare soil situation across the landscape, if you can imagine it, and it was all real black, and it burned the top layers of the soil. Basically, the soil has a material in it typically that'll actually burn, and so it scorches and burns actually into that top layer of soil. And so what happens afterwards is that you get a real heavy runoff of sediment from. The desirable thing is to manage that in a way that would be beneficial to streams and to fish and fish habitat. One of the things that we did on our lands, on Boise lands, was to create silt barriers in each one of these draws, and we built several silt barriers up the draw that would work to capture some of that sediment as it washed down off of the site before it got into Flat Creek and washed down onto the salmon and steelhead spawning beds.
Flat Creek, and Elk Creek is an important salmon and steelhead producing stream. It's one of the most important in the Rogue Basin. Produces approximately 30% of the total numbers, and for coho and salmon, they're anadromous fish. It's been part of their life cycle in the ocean as adults, and they come back to freshwater to spawn, and they need to be able to spend at least a year in fresh water as they mature before they outmigrate. So that, as Ken is talking about with the structure, it's not only important for their spawning beds, but for them to be able to rear and stay in fresh water and survive throughout the summer into the next winter. These lands that we're looking at were part of what were considered the Oregon and California Railroad grant lands. And if you can imagine, back in the 1860s, 1870s, where we have currently Interstate 5, that travel route was used by wagons, by people on horseback, and so through the development of the West and more settling, they wanted to have a better transportation network. And so the railroad was needed to be built from Portland down to the California border, and to finance that, the federal government gave 4 million acres in western Oregon that went from about 50 miles on either side of Interstate 5 to the railroad company to sell the timber to finance the railroad. In 1937, there was an act passed called the Oregon and California Revested Grant Lands Act that was done for 2 purposes. One was to generate revenue for the counties. These lands are really established to help fund schools, to help for providing for funds for public services, and then also to allow for the watershed values, so clean water for municipal watersheds, like the Big Butte Springs municipal watershed. That's important for Medford, for Ginger Springs, for the town of Butte Falls. And so those are the 2 real primary purposes: generate revenue and provide for timber, clean water, and also for recreation.
The fire, like we talked about, came through here in 2002, and one of the differences between private and BLM land is private was able to come in here right after the fire. I mean, the fire was out, and they were in here salvaging their timber. We have to go through, like John talked about, we need to do an assessment of as far as what actions we can take on the BLM lands, and that takes time. We need to be looking at what we're going to do, and then all the impacts on the other resources like wildlife, like spotted owls, soils, fish. Private landowners pay taxes on their land. This is the way that the federal lands help contribute to the local economy by us managing it for timber and getting the value of that timber off of these lands.
Here.
What is it showing?
Let's see. We oiled here, Matt. Could you hold that, please? We oiled that this morning, and so now, okay, there we go. So we had one there, so we got 1, 1, 2. There we go. 1, 2. He was actually growing pretty good in the beginning. See that?
Yeah.
See how far apart they were?
Far apart, right?
And down in here they're getting, I can't even count them.
MacArthur rim, broken top.
Broken top.
Get
Yeah.
started?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Push hard, get it.
we like to
Keep
hike
going.
and
What you did, kind of in general?
Well, we picked the bigger trees under 3 feet circumference around. We just took the bigger ones so that the little ones could grow. Our kids can have
What was kind of your main?
Yes, but we did a different method about the requirements of the quota of the minimal of like 15 diameter or the maximum of 35 diameter. We learned that you would at least have to have 200 trees per an acre and make sure they are growing fine. You can't just walk away. And we also learned that the further apart the rings are, the more sunlight that they have, and the closer they are, the less sunlight they have.
We did the little drill thing where you drill into the center of the tree and look at the core and then see all the spirals on, see how old they are. We did that too.
Anybody remember?
What did we take? What did we leave?
We were sort of balanced, sort of. We took some young trees, we took some old trees. We decreased the competition so the more healthier trees could grow. We also took out some trees that with a cone that only had like 30 or like 60% of the cone still there. We sort of took those out if they were too close to another tree, but that was healthy and still young.
We want just one kind of species.